was a trial, before anyone outside law enforcement had looked at any of the evidence, Avery's guilt was a foregone conclusion. Some of the victim's burned remains were found near a garage used by Avery. His blood was in her car. Her car key had been discovered in his bedroom. But this tidy narrative of detective work grew messier as details emerged about the peculiar circumstances under which the supposedly incriminating evidence against Avery had been gathered. Some of the investigators were not even supposed to have been on the Avery property, or indeed have anything at all to do with the case, because they were connected in various ways to the frame-up that had sent Avery to prison 2 decades earlier. Once their involvement was revealed, public certainty about Avery's guilt began to erode. Even before this meeting with Dean, I'd been following the story on television and in the newspaper, like many other people in the Wisconsin area. My connection to it was deeper than most. I had met Steven Avery. As it happened, I had served on the legislative task force that was set up to investigate what went wrong in his wrongful rape conviction and to recommend reforms. The Avery family ran its auto scrapyard in a place called Two Rivers, Wisconsin, which is not quite halfway between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, not exactly the middle of the United States. But it's not far off. About 100 miles north of Milwaukee and 10 miles west of Lake Michigan, the scrapyard is in an area remote enough for a family of modest means to own 44 acres of land. On it, they stored thousands of cars, an inventory of discards that could be sold for scrap or parts. Family members lived in trailers or homes near the yard. It was a business, and it was a life. Not quite a true city, not a suburb. Two Rivers is a world apart, and the Averys lived on its outskirts. And it is in such forgotten places, among people from the wrong end of town or no town at all, that the ideals of our criminal justice system are stress-tested every day. On that early March afternoon in 2006, no one would have expected that scrap heap and the people living around it to set off one of the most far-reaching discussions about the American criminal justice system for generations. That millions of people would become absorbed by the Avery case a decade later was, at that moment, beyond conception. Improbably, they became the subject of a 10-hour, 10-episode television documentary, Making a Murderer, which riveted viewers in America and around the globe, most of whom had only a superficial understanding of our country's justice system. Like nothing else had before, it drilled deep into a world that was out of public sight, but where Dean and I had worked for decades. The saga of Steven Avery, which unfolded in a sweeping narrative studded with intricate detail, stunned many as a portrayal of a badly warped American justice system. Its twists and turns neared Shakespearean proportions, and I will deal with them in depth. But what happened to Steven Avery is not unique. So I write this book to widen the lens beyond that case, to try to show what the world looks like to people who are standing alone and accused and, many times, despised. As a defense lawyer, my place is by their sides. Far too often, to be charged with the crime is to become something less than human. It is my work to demand that my adversaries in court, the many who are honorable and the handful who are not, meet the requirements of the law. But there is much more to it than straightforward lawyering. Defense lawyers must fight not just to protect the legal rights of their clients, but also to protect their clients' humanity, a frequent casualty of the Leviathan machinery of the courts. Across most of my career of 35 years, law enforcement has been granted a de facto monopoly on wisdom and truth-telling, a presumption of virtue that has dragged us far from the bedrock principles on which American justice originated. The founders of the United States of America, who lived in an age of sovereign power that was cruelly and arbitrarily applied, were keen to create a nation that protected its citizens from government abuse and excess. This, John Adams declared in his closing argument for the defense in the 1770 Boston Massacre trial, was the formula for a secure and stable society. He said, "It's of more importance to community that innocence should be protected, for guilt and crimes are so frequent in the world that all of them cannot be punished. But when innocence itself is brought to the bar and condemned, especially to die, the subject will exclaim, 'It is immaterial to me whether I behave well or ill, for virtue itself is no security.'" And if such a sentiment as this